Mr Flip-Flop is back at it again. The man hoping to be the next Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has thrown former ally Jeremy Corbyn under the bus. Good place for him. In a new ITV programme released tonight, Keir Starmer, up close, insists he never thought Mr Corbyn had a chance of becoming Prime Minister in 2019, despite being at the heart of his election campaign. Let's have a look.
I didn't think the Labour Party was in a position to win the last election. I didn't, obviously, vote for Jeremy Corbyn in 2015 or 2016. On the contrary, I resigned.
But you travelled across the country to argue for him.
You know, I thought that once that 2016 Brexit referendum had happened, I took the view that what then followed in the next few years was going to be felt for generations, and that I thought it was my responsibility to play a full part in that.
I mean, what does he even mean by that? Nobody knows what Keir Starmer means by almost anything that he says. Let's bring in my panel for this evening. Political commentator Mike Indian, broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford, and broadcaster and barrister Andrew Eborn. Welcome to all of you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Keir Starmer has a particular skill, which I've discussed with people in the past, where immediately he says something, you just forget it. I've watched speeches by him. I've sat with people watching speeches by him, and you turn to them after and you say, what did he say? And everybody's forgotten. They're kind of like, he sort of puts you into a trance of some kind.
He has
where
charisma.
Charisma, I like that. I like that a lot.
Charisma bypass is what I think they said.
It really is. He doesn't have a sort of any sort of personality that you can decipher.
Which is kind of perfect if you're a barrister or if you're prosecuting
well, actually,
a
I
case.
disagree.
What's this?
Well, I don't know.
Actually, I disagree. I think some of the most colourful characters I've known in my life have been barristers.
Yes.
And the better you are
but when you're performing,
Yeah.
it's not about you. It's about the case that you're prosecuting.
Yes, but I can't imagine him performing as a barrister in the same way that, say, Andrew would,
Yes.
or other friends
You
of
can
mine
imagine
who-
me doing a better
Well,
job.
maybe that's why he's a former barrister.
I suspect he would be a really boring barrister and a really boring
He would
lawyer.
bore you
I'll
into
tell you what's
submission.
really sad. Watching tonight's programme was yet again he talked about how he was estranged from his father.
Yeah.
You know, and talk about, OK, you want to talk about the personal side, about his relationship, how great it is with his wife, how one of his children, he won't say who, doesn't want to come to Downing Street if he gets in there. They want to say where they are.
Oh, really?
So there you
They've
go.
always had the conversation.
Well, exactly. But he said that he was always estranged from his father. And you think that's sort of a sad moment. I don't know. Is that sort of revealing that he's trying to appeal to people who don't get on with their fathers? I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it?
I
Really?
don't know. I mean, I haven't had the benefit of seeing this programme. I've just seen that one piece.
He was watching yours instead, by the way.
Well, exactly right. It's far more entertaining, to be honest. But, you know, I worry that Keir Starmer, one, doesn't appear to have any real kind of conviction about anything. I mean, here he is talking about Jeremy Corbyn, who he did call his friend, whether he likes it or not.
That is a huge risk,
you know,
to be able to say, I didn't actually believe in 2019 that we... But you gave a really good account of that in 2019.
Yeah. And he said Jeremy Corbyn was his friend.
Now?
He also said there should be a second referendum on the European Union. He also said that, you know, he would definitely stop and review all arms sales to Saudi Arabia, which last Sunday when he was on BBC show with Laura Kunzberg, he said he's not going to do that anymore. So, I mean, everything changes with this guy.
His conviction is to win. This is a man who's potentially leading Labour into, you know, what could be a fifth election defeat if things go very badly wrong in the opinion polls. So Starmer's conviction to win is overriding everything else. I think there is a little bit more room for him to show substance, and not just the personal stuff tonight, but you could see on Anushka Starner's face in that clip when he was talking about Corbyn, she wasn't convinced.
No.
Of course, look,
neither was I.
He may not have thought that they could win, but he could have left the shadow cabinet and campaigned against Corbyn.
And the trouble is this, when you toe the party line, which is clearly what he's doing, you never say about your leader, they're not going to win. It's always going to come back to bite you, isn't it? So all these little clips about saying, well, if I didn't really mean that, well, what are you meaning now?
Right.
Why should we believe anything that you say?
It's like a guy who comes up to you and goes, I used to be a liar, but I'm not now. Oh, right, OK, then. Fine.
Also,
who
is the audience for this? I mean, this is primetime TV,
Yes.
so ITV has cleared their schedule for a programme that actually probably not very many people are going to watch. How many people really actively tune in to party political broadcasts? This is just a half-an-hour version of that. And it'd be interesting to see whether actually the average man in the street and the person who's like 50% less engaged than the average man in the street is not going to be watching.
And they're going to do one on Rishi Sunak in a couple of weeks' time for balance, aren't they?
Oh, are they?
Apparently, yes.
They better move quick in case the election is called.
The problem for Starmer, of course, is that when he was up against Boris Johnson, you know, he was appearing to be a better bet in the sense that he was meant to be a safe pair of hands. He was less flamboyant. He was the guy that you could sort of rely on rather than this kind of crazy character who just kind of kept popping up and talking about random things for no reason. But against Rishi Sunak, he doesn't look like that guy, because they're both pretty boring. Yeah. And so he doesn't have that advantage.
This election is going to suffer, I think, from the fact that, unlike 2019, you haven't got the big personalities out there. So, although Corbyn wasn't charismatic, he was an identifiable character. The political cartoonists call it identity tags, people that can actually have, describe them in cartoons. There's a reason that...
And young people particularly knew who he was.
Absolutely,
quite liked him. He went to Glastonbury.
We did.
You know what Rishi Sunak should do? I think Rishi Sunak should actually do one of these programmes and literally go everywhere in a helicopter. And that should start to be his brand, and he should really own it in the way that Boris Johnson owned the fact that he was an Etonian.
He could get on Michelle Moan's yacht at one point, and they could just go from one luxury form of
Is he not owning the helicopter thing? I'm not detecting him rowing away from that.
I don't think he does try to pretend he doesn't do that.
What I'm really looking forward to, though, are all these deep fake videos, which are going to be absolutely brilliant. This is the first time. Oh, no, absolutely. The first time ever, I say, AI has advanced so tremendously, you can't tell the difference between what's real and what's fake anymore. And all these deep fake videos are going to be coming out.
I would say with Keir Starmer, actually, if he says something of substance, it's probably a deep fake video.
I mean, you might be old enough to remember Max Headroom.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
The first AI-generated sort of talk show host. I mean, Keir Starmer reminds me of him.
He does.
And if, in fact,
I
used to call him Max Headroom before people came up with, flip-flop, Captain Einstein, and all the rest of it. But he is he's like a computer-generated talking head. He doesn't really appear to have even any markings on him. I mean, he's got very smooth skin.
Yes.
He's got sort of anybody's haircut. He wears very nondescript
But listen,
clothes.
he's doing an Obama thing at the moment, which is if I come across as very neutral, people can project onto me whatever they want to see. And therefore, I can't give the game away by actually having policies or opinions. I've actually got to be really bland.
And you're so right. It's so easy.
Working.
So easy to be in opposition, isn't it? Because all you have to do is criticise whatever they're doing. It's wrong. It's not working. And therefore,
early in the political cycle, now is the tricky part. We have to sell a vision, because otherwise, Labour. It's always harder for Labour to win elections.
Because they're working on the basis. They're having conversations now, which I find extraordinary. With we're going to take over, so let's start doing the handover now. As it seemed to be coming out of that sort of story, and you're sort of turning around, and Sunak should be saying, "No, you shouldn't. Remember what happened with Trump and Clinton. Everybody went to bed saying that Hillary had won. They woke up in the morning and there was Donald saying,
well, that's what happened with the Brexit referendum.
Absolutely.
People went to bed. Even Nigel Farage went home. He thought he'd lost. A lot of people thought Jeremy Corbyn would do a lot better than he did. A lot of people also say now that the reason for Boris Johnson's massive win in 2019 was because people really didn't want Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
And so now we've got a situation where they say it's a bit like 97, but it's not. Because Tony Blair was a force of nature, whether you liked him or not, and he had some brilliant people around him, whether you liked them or not, like Gordon Brown, like Peter Mandelson, like that whole kind of, new Labour movement.
Right.
But this new Labour movement, whatever it's called, is not a movement at all. I mean, I don't think most people in Britain could name two people in the Labour Party.
It's 2010, really. So you've got an opposition leader who people aren't really convinced about. That was Cameron in 2010. You've got a government that's been through a prolonged period of crisis, not just COVID, but also the Brown government had deep instability that people are still a bit hesitant about. The election will be a lot closer, Mike, than any of us think.
I agree.
It's going to be.
I think it will be. And I think some of the polls are probably going to be found to be way off because nobody really trusts Starmer. And particularly this business now where he throws his mates under the bus and says, I wasn't really his friend.
The trouble is, I heard a really interesting analogy a couple of days ago, which is that this general election is going to be a little bit like a bus replacement service. You don't actually want to get on the bus, but because the train isn't working, you're going to have to get on the bus. So you don't want to go into, but you don't really want to vote for Labour. But actually what's currently up for grabs in terms of Conservative policy or even the way in which they're conducting themselves is so unappealing that actually people are like, OK, I'll get on the replacement.
Or maybe you just don't decide to go anywhere and just stay at home.
I was going to say, a lot of people will stay. I think that will be down this year.
But you're absolutely right. It's a vote against as a result and not a vote for. And that's the real problem. So the reason that people like Reform are really going through the roof, they're sort of turning around and saying, well, hang about, some great policies here. And a lot of people going for that sort of side. At the end of the day, Reform are obviously not going to win the general election.
Ooh,
they could be the kingmaker. And I think you look at that.
I think they'll be lucky to get one seat.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Even though they have no policies. They have a brand, but they don't have any policies at all.
Well, they've got some. It's not so much that, it's just the system's against them. But we'll have to come back to that, promise you, because we are running late and I will be told off